They say a woman's life ends at 50. Victoria Langley learned the opposite. The night she walked out of her cold, loveless marriage, she rented a hidden apartment no one knew about. It was supposed to be a place to cry, to heal, to disappear. But destiny lives in strange places, because in the apartment next door lived Aiden Cross, 23-year-old writer with quiet eyes and a habit of noticing people too deeply. The kind of noticing that feels like a confession. One accidental meeting in the dim hallway. One shared secret. One night of honesty. And suddenly Victoria wasn't invisible anymore. But secrets have gravity. And hers. Hers could destroy the only connection she'd felt in years. This is the story of how a 50-year-old woman escaped her life. And how a 23-year-old neighbor became the reason she couldn't hide anymore. Victoria Langley had spent half of her life smiling for photographs she didn't want to be in. She had learned how to stay quiet so the world wouldn't hear the cracks in her marriage, or the loneliness in her chest, or the dreams she had buried at 30 and forgotten by 40. But at 50, something inside her finally exhaled. It happened on a cold Thursday night. Her husband, Charles Langley, sat in the dining room, scrolling through emails with the same expression he used for strangers. They hadn't spoken in 3 days. They could go weeks without touching, and suddenly, Victoria realized, I don't want my life to end like this. So she packed a small suitcase, not enough to look suspicious, and left before the guilt could pull her back. The city greeted her like a stranger, who still remembered her name. Cold air, yellow streetlights, the smell of rain on concrete. She walked to the building she had secretly rented online. The secret apartment. A small, quiet place tucked into an old brick building. A place meant for hiding. A place meant for starting over. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and felt something she hadn't felt in years, relief. Not happiness. Not peace. Just relief, the silence of a life that suddenly belonged to her again. But silence doesn't stay empty for long, because as she stepped back into the hallway to take a breath, she bumped into someone, literally. A warm hand steadied her arm. A young voice said, "Whoa, sorry. Are you okay?" Victoria looked up and saw Aiden Cross for the very first time. He was holding a grocery bag, messy brown hair falling into his eyes, a small paint stain on his shirt. A boy who wasn't really a boy, but a young man with a softness the world hadn't beaten out of him yet. "First night?" he asked. She nodded. He smiled, the kind of smile that makes you feel seen. "If you ever need anything," he said. "I'm literally next door." And then he disappeared into his apartment. Victoria stood frozen. No one had looked at her that attentively in years. Not her husband. Not her friends. Not even herself. She closed her door, leaned against it, and whispered, "What am I doing?" But deep down, she already knew. She wasn't running from her marriage. She was running back to herself. The boy next door the next morning, sunlight spilled through the apartment in a soft golden wash. Victoria slipped into a simple sweater, tied her hair loosely, and walked downstairs for coffee. Inside the building cafe, a tiny place run by an elderly couple. She chose a table hidden in the corner, but she wasn't alone for long. "Mind if I sit?" Aiden's voice drifted across the room. Victoria looked up, surprised. He held 2 coffees. "I accidentally ordered 2, he lied poorly. "Thought you might want one." She smiled, despite herself. "Thank you, Aiden." He sat across from her, adjusting his sleeve nervously. He wasn't flirtatious. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just kind, comfortable, present, double quotes. "So," he began, tapping his cup. "You live next door, but I've never seen you here before. I, just needed some space." "From what?" "Everything." Aiden didn't ask further. He simply nodded, as if understanding without needing details. That silence. Soft. Accepting made her chest tighten. He talked instead about his writing, his dream of publishing a novel. How he worked nights at a bookstore and spent mornings scribbling ideas on scraps of paper. "You write?" she asked. Trying to, he laughed. "Mostly I just stare at my laptop in panic." For the first time in years, Victoria laughed genuinely. Aiden's eyes softened at the sound. You should laugh more, he said quietly. Her breath caught, not because of the words, but because no one had said something like that to her since she was young. And for a moment, she forgot about age, expectations. It's the world outside. They were just two people sharing coffee, but the age gap was there. The unspoken tension was there. A sense of something forbidden. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt impossible. When they finished coffee, Aiden stood and hesitated. Victoria, he said softly, I know I shouldn't say this, but you seem like someone who's been holding their breath for a long time. Her heart skipped. And, she whispered, and I hope this place lets you finally breathe. He walked away before she could respond. Victoria stood in the doorway of the cafe, watching him leave, her fingers trembling. Something was happening. Something warm. Something dangerous. Something she didn't have the strength to stop, back in her apartment. She touched the wall between their rooms. Thin, close. Too close. She could hear the faint sound of Aiden humming, typing, moving around. Her neighbor, her friend, her unexpected breath of air, her biggest risk.